Could we see a significant multiplayer trade happen this offseason between the Coyotes and the Montreal Canadiens? Apparently, it came very close to going down before the trade deadline, and NHL insiders expect conversations to resume. Plus, what's the latest status on some big-name pending UFAs like Johnny Gaudreau and Filip Forsberg? Plus, we have several prospect signings, including Jake Sanderson in Ottawa. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss here today. First up, we have several NHL signings. Many college players are leaving the college system to head to the NHL and sign their entry-level contracts. Some of them are undrafted free agents, and of course, some are more recently drafted NHL prospects. The biggest name of the bunch would be Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators from the 2020 NHL draft, arguably the top player in U.S. college hockey this season. Of course, the defenseman projects to be a top four for sure, most likely a top pair defense prospect here. He's had a tremendous college career. Obviously, he went in the same draft as Tim Stützle when they had the number 3, number 5 NHL draft picks. Certainly a real blue chip prospect here for Ottawa. They were hoping he would leave the University of North Dakota and sign his pro contract. He is expected to be able to burn the contract like first year off this year and play some NHL games. Right now, he's actually injured, battling a hand injury as he was unable to play the last little bit of the season here with UND. So it might be a little while before he gets into NHL action. He's likely going to be out. They're estimating somewhere around 3 to 4 more weeks. So he's not going to get a chance to play a lot of NHL games, but he should be able to get in, maybe a half dozen or so. It's really hard to say exactly how many, but the other good part about that is not only can he get some NHL action under his belt to see, just to get a little taste of it and see how things go, but he can be eligible to be sent down to their AHL affiliate in Belleville to have yet another player join them for the playoffs. So that's going to be huge. The Sens have a number of players who are eligible to go down and do that. That could have a big impact on their development because they have a pretty solid team down there, and with what they can send down, they'll get even that much better. So that's great news from Sanderson. And of course, when it comes to another top defensive prospect for Ottawa, at the same school as Sanderson is Tyler Kleven. We haven't quite heard yet if he will sign or if he'll return for another season at the University of North Dakota, but the Senators have invited and encouraged him to make the jump to pro hockey, but we have not heard of a decision yet from his camp. So that should be coming here in a very short time here in the coming days. Now, we also had some other signings today, including the St. Louis Blues signing a defensive prospect, Matthew Kessel, who was 21 years old, taken the 2020 NHL draft. From of course, was playing at UMass Amherst, of course, so he jumps over to the Blues now, likely going to have some time in their AHL affiliate, so certainly nice to get him signed. Of course, he was drafted at a slightly older age, like he wasn't the first time he was eligible taken here by the Blues. We also saw the New Jersey Devils sign Brian Halonen, who's an undrafted college free agent. He's 23 years old, so he gets a 1-year entry-level contract as well. Can play either wing and likely will end up reporting to their American Hockey League affiliate. They may give him a few NHL games as well. It's not quite clear. Some of these contracts are kicking in right away if their teams are letting them burn a year off, and some don't start till next season. Now, the Philadelphia Flyers have also signed prospect Noah Cates, a 2-year entry-level contract, 23 years old. He was actually drafted by the Flyers way back in 2017. He played 4 full years at the University of Minnesota Duluth. So just goes to show that if players do stay in college for 4 years, it doesn't mean for sure that they won't sign with the team that drafted them. Players don't do that just strictly to avoid those teams and to be able to get free agency to go anywhere else. It does happen, of course, at times, but there's plenty of times when it's just not right for their development and they really want to finish their college degree before they make the jump and try to play pro hockey full time. So obviously that's another good signing there by the Flyers. And of course we also have the Anaheim Ducks signing 21-year-old center prospect Josh Lapina, who's taken in the 2021 NHL draft. So clearly taken in the 21 draft at 21 years of age. Fair to say we can call this guy a late bloomer. He would have been teammates with Blues prospect Matthew Kessel at UMass Amherst, and like I said, he was drafted just last year in the 4th round. So he makes the jump as well to the Anaheim Ducks organization. Now, of course, we did see an injury today that could be significant, and that's young goaltender Ilya Sorokin of the New York Islanders. Apparently did not come out for the third period due to a potential suspected concussion after taking a few bumps to the head. So obviously that's not good news. The last thing you want to see anybody in the NHL get for an injury is a concussion, since they're so unpredictable and can have such a long-lasting effect. And with everything we've learned over concussions the last number of years, certainly one of the more dangerous things you can have happen to them. But he certainly has been playing extremely well, and in my opinion has proven he's ready to be the full-time NHL starter for this team. He and Varlamov have pretty much ran fairly, pretty close to being a pretty even tandem here for the most part. A lot of debate whether or not Varlamov will return to the Islanders next year, or if they may move on from him and run with Sorokin full-time here. But either way, the injury to Sorokin is unfortunate. Islanders have been playing really well as of late, but unfortunately, playoffs at this point, even though they're not mathematically eliminated, are pretty much impossible. We also saw a first today, a record in the cap era. We've never seen an NHL team score 11 goals during a regular season game, and that happened today with the Pittsburgh Penguins scoring 11 against Detroit as they battled the Detroit Red Wings at home in Pittsburgh. They certainly exploded for a ton of offense. Certainly not the right side of a record you want to be on if you're the Red Wings, but very impressive outing for the Penguins today. It's we've had 9 goals, 10 goals, but we'd never seen 11 in the cap era until now. Now, as I mentioned as well, there's a lot of talk and speculation about the futures of Filip Forsberg in Nashville and Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary. Arguably two of the top, if not the top, pending unrestricted free agents that we talked a lot about heading to the NHL trade deadline. Given the team success of the Calgary Flames this year, there really wasn't much of anybody thinking that Johnny Gaudreau could find himself traded, because the Calgary Flames really have a legitimate shot at winning the Western Conference in many opinions. So why would they trade one of their top players when they, especially if they're confident they're going to get him signed, right? So usually you see top UFAs on non-playoff teams get moved. When it comes to Forsberg, there was a lot of debate because the Predators, even though right now they're projecting a decent chance to be a playoff team, it's far from a guarantee, and they certainly have a ways to go to solidify a spot. Now, Forsberg's having a career year during a contract season, which can be risky, but right now he's playing so well that somebody is probably going to offer a ridiculous amount of money to him. The same can be said for Johnny Gaudreau. David Poile made it known, though, that leading into the deadline, that he was not going to trade Forsberg and that they were going to continue negotiating, and they felt confident they could get something done before free agency kicks in. But certainly when it comes to Johnny Gaudreau, it's all been pretty quiet. We haven't really heard much of anything. The last time, and really one of the only times this year we heard anything, was on a radio interview. Assistant General Manager Craig Conroy made some comments to, I believe it was Sportsnet Radio, I can't remember, it was a few weeks ago now, or actually maybe it was before the deadline, probably more like a month or 5 weeks ago or something like that, said that it was pretty much a done deal, that they were absolutely going to get the job done and get him signed, and made it sound like it was all ready to roll and it was not a problem at all. But yet, here we stand all this time later, past the deadline, no contract signed, and we haven't had any news leak at all that things are even remotely close. The way he's been playing as of late and helping the Flames win games and put up the point totals he has, somebody's going to offer Johnny Gaudreau as well as Forsberg a ridiculous amount of money in the offseason and free agency. You see it happen all the time, and sometimes GMs make really good decisions, but a lot of times on free agency, they make a lot of big mistakes. And some of these guys, obviously, they're getting to their later 20s. They get that 8-year, 7-year deal. Big money. Once they get paid, they don't always perform up to the same standards anymore. Sometimes it's because of their bodies breaking down or decline, and sometimes it's more of a will thing. Everybody's a little bit different in that regard. So, in my opinion, I don't think either player really wants to leave, but the way they're both playing and the numbers they're putting up, there's lots of teams out there that could use their services. I certainly think that both teams are at least facing some risk for sure. And with David Poile not signing Forsberg, I'm not 100% convinced that he stays in Nashville, even though I do believe that they're going to do everything in their power to get the job done. I just don't completely know that they're going to be able to do it. When it comes to Gaudreau in Calgary, to me, it's a little less certainty as well. To me, this is a big year for Calgary because not only is Gaudreau a pending UFA, but Matthew Tkachuk is a pending RFA. They have other guys that are going to probably have to go, and it's just not going to be the same team next year. Now, there's been a lot of talk, too, that they did come close to trading Sean Monahan at the NHL trade deadline. It really wasn't something they wanted to do right now, but apparently the Flames were having some conversations around some of the other players that they didn't end up acquiring that would have required money going out, and Monahan would be the main player that they'd want to move to free up that space to do any kind of other upgrade to any part of the team. So it's certainly not a huge surprise that that would be the player to go. But at the same time here, I think both teams are going to be facing a lot of changes in the offseason, especially Calgary, and both teams are certainly at risk. But right now, there's no rumblings at all that anything is anywhere close to getting a contract done, considering how late in the season we are and with playoffs on the horizon. I don't think there'd be a whole lot of negotiating going on. But at the same time, like all that leading to the deadline, these teams are running the risk here that another team that might be desperate to add a scoring winger is going to come along and offer them ridiculous money, and they would end up losing them here. So we'll see. A lot of people have been convinced for a long time that Johnny Gaudreau was going to leave the Calgary Flames organization, and I guess the time will come here soon enough to find out how he really feels about being a Calgary Flame. Now, as I mentioned, according to Chris Johnson, NHL Insider, there is a major deal with several pieces involved being discussed between the Montreal Canadiens and the Arizona Coyotes. Now, we had heard other rumors suggesting that the Coyotes and the Habs were talking about the Habs trading the Shea Weber contract to the Coyotes. Now, obviously, the Coyotes have different reasons to be motivated to do something like that. Obviously, right now, they don't have a ton of contracts for next year. They have been picking up a few more here leading into the deadline, so they have a few more than they did a few weeks ago, but they still don't have a ton of players under contract. Given their move from their current arena to the ASU arena, which is much smaller, and with, the 3 to 4 years of uncertainty over when a new arena is going to come, it's quite a possibility that team might have a hard time attracting free agents. And obviously, the other thing they want to kind of gauge here is they want to probably keep their finances down as well, keeping a competitive team on the ice to sell tickets, keep the fans interested, but at the same time, they want to keep their payroll more flexible. So any kind of contracts that are signed super long term might not be something that they're overly interested in. So when it comes to Shea Weber, though, of course, that can be insured through the injury, and of course it gets a player on the books. They don't need to use LTIR to reach the salary cap floor. It just allows them to have that many more actual active contracts of players that are making less money, and they don't have to worry about it quite so much in hitting the cap floor. So with all that said, what all here was involved? If the Shea Weber contract was going from Montreal to Arizona, what else could it be? Now, the NHL insiders like Johnson, who's talked about this, has never really given us any additional details. But if you look at each roster, you have to think there's a few possibilities here. Who's the main player that was not traded at the trade deadline, who also plays for the Coyotes? Well, that's defenseman Jakob Chychrun, who comes with some term. He's still relatively young. Could Montreal be trying to get in on the Chychrun sweepstakes and conversations there? I do think that would have been a possibility. I think there's also a chance maybe the Coyotes were willing to maybe take back Christian Dvorak. He does have a contract for a few more years as well. Would the Coyotes take a guy like Jonathan Drouin, who it's believed that Montreal has been looking for a fresh start for and will continue to do so this offseason? So there's a few names right there that to me would totally make sense. So you could have any combination of whether it be Weber, Dvorak, or Drouin could have been involved going to the Coyotes. Maybe there was some other picks or prospects involved. Hard to say. And then going back the other way, I would think that there's probably a pick or prospect involved here as well. And I kind of wondered if maybe Chychrun might be involved. But if he is, they're going to not only need to have a player like a Dvorak or a Druid to probably get their cap down just to make things more flexible, but they're going to have to add at least a couple of assets in there as well, for the future to make it worthwhile and trading this player that they are very fond of. So you're looking at probably a first-round pick. You're probably looking at a more recently drafted first-round selection. Would they consider Caden Gooley? I'm not so sure. Obviously, they might ask about Cole Caulfield. I don't see that happening, right? All these players that could be in the mix would be, the top guns, but obviously Montreal would not want to do something like that. Clearly, you look at their blue line here. Recently, they picked up Justin Barron from the Avalanche in the Lehkonen deal. Of course, they just signed Jordan Harris, as I mentioned. I believe that was yesterday's news, talking with the big defenseman from Northeastern. A big prospect, not overly huge guy, but, he's a pretty significant prospect. Under contract, there's a couple of young guys we're going to see jump into the Habs lineup here. Then, of course, on top of that, you have Romanov, who's a real solid young defenseman. If they were to get a guy like Chychrun, they have Caden Gooley. That's one heck of a D-core prospect, combination of prospect and experienced players that would lead this team for a very long time. As much as there's no real way to confirm that's what they were discussing, it does make a lot of sense, and you have to wonder what kind of picks and prospects and other players would have been involved. But Johnson certainly is onto something with these reports, and he suspects that there's a really good opportunity here that those talks will resume and pick back up either at or before the NHL draft later this summer. So let me know your thoughts on this rumor from Chris Johnston. Which other players that are active on a roster or picks and prospects do you think would have been involved, and how big would this trade have been? Johnson went on to say that it was very complex with lots of moving parts, which is why they couldn't get it done and why he expects them to talk about it more in the offseason when there's more time to get it all right and sorted out for both sides in order to execute this deal. Your thoughts on that and everything else discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.